استلهمت أو نصر عدوى استلهمه هو منهم نيلسون مانديلا وكوامي نكروما وباتريس لومومبا وإلى آخره من المناضلين الذين كانوا يرون في إفريقيا هذا الانتصار الذي جعلهم يناضلون ويحررون مناطقهم ودولهم ويحررون إفريقيا بصورة عامة. وطبعا يمكننا حديثا يعني أخذ من أهم انتصارات عدوى الذي يعتبر أيضا لإثيوبيا من أكبر الانتصارات ولإفريقيا أيضا هو صد النهضة الإثيوبي الكبير. هو يعني يعتبر من أهم ولا يقل شأنا عن انتصار عدوى، لأنه طبعا يعني خلق تكامل إقليميا بين دول الجوار وبين دول القرن الإفريقي وإفريقيا كاملة. فصد النهضة كما نعلم يعني الينابيع والمياه التي يعني تخرج من الهضبة الإثيوبية من إثيوبيا بصورة عامة يعني أسست لنا وخلقت لنا صد النهضة الإثيوبي الذي طبعا إثيوبيا اعتبرته إنجازا كبير، وأيضا الأفارقة أيضا اعتبروه إنجازا كبير يساهم يعني في تطوير الكهرباء وتطوير الاقتصاد الإثيوبي وأيضا تطوير الاقتصاد للدول المجاورة يعني لخلق تكامل إقليمي. وأيضا انتصار عدوى يعني علمنا الصيادة الوطنية ليست فقط في الأرض بل أرضا جوا وأيضا عبر البحار. لذلك نرى إثيوبيا أيضا تريد أن تحقق انتصارا جديدا عبر الوصول إلى البحر الأحمر بطرق سلمية. طبعا يعني كما نعلم أن كل الدول المجاورة معظم الدول الإفريقية يعني الذين يعني تقع في شمال شرق إفريقيا وفي القرن الإفريقي يستفيدون من المياه التي تنبع من إثيوبيا، وإثيوبيا أيضا يعني ساهمت وتساعد لكي يستفيد كل دول الجوار من المياه الإثيوبية سواء كان عبر الكهرباء أو عبر الزراعة من أجل خلق تكامل إقليمي من أجل الوحدة الإفريقية. إثيوبيا يعني لم تحتضن المقر الأفريقي يعني من فراغ، بل لأنها لديها رؤية أفريقية، لديها نضال إفريقي. لذلك إثيوبيا أيضا يعني من الدول كما نعلم أنها من الدول التي تحقق يعني قفزة صناعية وزراعية وتكنولوجية أيضا. لذلك كما نعلم أنها تعتمد فقط على ميناء جيبوتي في يعني في الاستيراد وفي التصدير بنسبة 80 إلى 90%. لذلك تريد عبر طرق سلمية أن توسع هذا المجال عبر يعني الدول المجاورة أيضا لتحصل على منفذ بحري بطرق سلمية من أجل أيضا التكامل الإقليمي. يعني إذا كان الدول المجاورة تستفيد من المياه الإثيوبية، لماذا أيضا إثيوبيا لا تستفيد من الميناء للدول المجاورة أيضا لخلق تكامل إقليمي كما تقول دائما. وطبعا السفراء إثيوبيا لديها يعني مقر لمعظم الدول الإفريقية والدول الأجنبية أيضا. هنالك العديد من السفارات، وطبعا يعني قناة نبض إفريقيا لديها باللغة الإنجليزية وباللغة العربية أيضا لديها العديد من اللقاءات مع سفراء عدة وكبار، يعني منهم سفراء من تنزانيا والولايات المتحدة وعدة سفراء من إفريقيا والعالم، وهم يعني يتفاهمون ويدركون ويعون جيدا يعني الرغبة الإثيوبية في الحصول على منفذ بحري من أجل الازدهار ومن أجل التكامل الاقتصادي ومن أجل أيضا يعني احتواء 130 مليون نسمة تقريبا من الشعب الإثيوبي يعتبر يعني دون منفذ بحري. وهذا شيء مهم يعني لخلق تكامل اقتصادي ولخلق أيضا يعني التجارة عبر الاستيراد وعبر التصدير. الدول أيضا المجتمع الدولي يتفهم جدا يعني ماهية ورغبة إثيوبيا السلمية في الحصول على منفذ بحري، لأنه كله كما ذكرنا إثيوبيا تسعى لكل هذا من أجل خلق هذا التكامل الإفريقي، خلقه كله في إطار سلمي وليس طبعا يعني عبر النزاعات وعبر يعني التصريحات العدائية كما يعني يروج لها بعض الدول التي يعني تريد انتساب شيئا ليس في إثيوبيا. لذلك يعني نرى إثيوبيا تحاول كل يوم يوما بعد يوم أن تخلق نصر عدوى جديد كل يوم، مرة عبر صد النهضة، مرة عبر التكنولوجيا، مرة عبر الاقتصاد. وكذلك الدول الإفريقية تستفيد من انتصار عدوى كما ذكرت، لأننا رأينا نضالهم في ذلك وتحرير بلادهم، وأيضا يعني انطلاق من الجزائر إطلاق أقمار صناعية. إثيوبيا تطلق أقمار صناعية وجنوب إفريقيا وكل الدول لديها انتصارات عدوى بشكل يعني إفريقي بصورة كاملة. تفضل جمتس.
Thank you, Theodros. Well, at Adwa Museum, at Adwa Victory Memorial Museum, a speech is being given by speakers. We can see that, and I hope our reporters will give us the details of the speeches.
Yeah, we expect.
Yeah, so let's continue, Zelalem, again. Let me take you, the both of you, to the 39th AU Summit and the deliberations that were, of course, reflected or made during that session. Or we remember that all African leaders who attended the 39th AU session, they agreed unanimously that Africans should stop just becoming exporters of their inputs or their resources, and they need to value add to their natural resources and benefit from what they have, from what they own. Now, poverty is prevalent, as we know, across Africa, and the leaders have vowed to change the way things have been, entertained, as far as exporting minerals or resources to the outside world is concerned.
Yeah, we consistently are saying like Africa is rich, but Africans are poor. Yes. That's the statement to show the fact that Africa has abundant natural resource, mineral resource necessary for the prosperity of the continent, but Africans are still poor. That display the fact that Africans are not utilizing their own resource for the betterment of their lives. And I mean, Africa, it's high time that Africa needs to utilize their own natural resource rather than exporting raw materials for outside world. They need to utilize their own natural resource for the prosperity of their respective nation. So at the 39 African Union Summit, we have witnessed a very important deliberations from African leaders. We are talking about the Victory of Adwa, the 130th anniversary of the Victory of Adwa, and the fruits of the Victory of Adwa is continental organizations like the African Union and the former Organization of African Unity. I mean, leaders of Africa during that time established this important continental organization here in Addis Ababa because they recognize the efforts, the contributions, the sacrifice made by Ethiopia, because Ethiopia, because of the Victory of Adwa, is serving as a beacon of African independence and African freedom. Because of the Victory of Adwa, Africans during that time were awakened to wage kind of anti-colonial struggle against their colonizers. And, till today, the African Union Summit is being conducted in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, which is also referred as the political capital of Africa. Because of the Victory of Adwa, we see other continental organizations as well and global organizations. For example, the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa is established here in Addis Ababa, and those global and continental organizations have very much to do with the Victory of Adwa, a decisive victory that Ethiopia gained over colonial aggressors at the Battle of Adwa. We have also been talking about the lessons that we need to take from the Victory of Adwa, and we have been saying that we need to foster development, and the other thing is, I would say, democracy. Ethiopians are very much active. Ethiopians are very much clever and tough and committed in terms of defending Ethiopia's territorial integrity, Ethiopia's national independence and sovereignty from external aggressors, from colonizers, from those who want to put Ethiopia in kind of colony. But Ethiopians are not as such active and clever and committed in terms of building, in terms of installing, in terms of nurturing democratic systems in their home country. And, it's high time that Ethiopians are required to nurture democratic system in their country, because it is through democracy that we can ensure the welfare of the society. It is through democracy that we can hear the voice of the people. It is through democracy that we can ensure the will of the people. The will of the people should always be respected, and we have seen also growth in terms of democracy in this historical nation.
Zelalem, excuse me, I want you to go to Professor Raymond Jonas, author of African History. Would you tell us about what is done?
Nice. So Professor Raymond Jonas is currently working as Professor of History at the University of Washington in the United States of America. He is the author of the book, The Battle of Adwa, African Victory in the Age of Empire. By the way, Professor Raymond Jonas is one of the very few white writers and historians.
I think you talked to him.
Yes, who wrote about a comprehensive history of the Battle of Adwa and the Victory of Adwa. And I had a good fortune and opportunity to talk to him through Zoom, through digital platform, and I have interviewed him, and I raised enormous question for him regarding the Battle of Adwa, the Victory of Adwa. And I think if the directors are prepared to play that interview, that fascinating interview, I think listeners and viewers could get a lot from this important interview.
Of course, Zelalem. Let's allow our viewers to watch the interview you had with Professor Raymond
Jonas.
Viewers, we would like to invite you to watch the interview we had, our POA had, in this case, Zelalem had with Professor Raymond Jonas, and we'll be back to you after that.
Can you paint the picture of the Battle of Adwa for our mass audience, like why and how the Battle of Adwa was fought?
The Italians have mobilized about 15,000 troops, as well as about 6,000 mercenaries, known colloquially as askari.
How Ethiopians were able to defeat Italy, well prepared, well organized.
And in fact, the Italians are counting on this rivalry among regional rulers to tear apart the Ethiopian initiative.
How do you investigate the contribution of Ethiopian leadership, the then leadership of Ethiopia, such as King Menelik and his wife Empress Taitu, in winning the battle?
One of the great challenges of any army is how you keep an army fed, how you keep its spirits high. I mean, morale is important for a successful army.
In 1884, 1885, European leaders conducted a historical conference in the city of Berlin, Germany. The conference was about ways of scrambling Africa among themselves. Afterwards, Europeans entered to Africa and colonized almost the entire continent. In that tough time of colonization, there was one country that successfully defended its sovereignty and independence from foreign aggressors, from European colonization. That country was Ethiopia. On the 1st of March, 1896, Ethiopians defeated Italian aggressors, colonizers, at the Battle of Adwa. Ethiopia's resounding victory over Italy ignited anti-colonial struggle across Africa. Hello and very warm welcome. My guest for today is Professor Raymond Jonas. Professor Raymond Jonas is Professor of History at the University of Washington in the United States of America. Professor Raymond Jonas is the author of the book, The Battle of Adwa, African Victory in the Age of Empire. Professor Raymond Jonas is in Seattle, United States. We are reaching Professor Raymond via Zoom. Hello, Professor, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. It's an honor and privilege to have you in our show. But first, can you paint the picture of the Battle of Adwa for our mass audience, like why and how the Battle of Adwa was fought, and what were the consequences, the outcomes of the Battle of Adwa?
Yes. So the Battle of Adwa was fought as part of a struggle over northeastern Africa. The fighting that breaks out in 1896, in fact, has a long history, which I'm sure your listeners and viewers can acquaint themselves with. But what matters in terms of the Battle of Adwa is that this is a decisive conflict between Ethiopian forces and Italian forces. Italians had pushed as far south as Lake Ashenge, and this was an intolerable situation from the Ethiopian point of view. Menelik and Taitu organized their forces And the key to their strategy is to organize an overwhelming force, that is an Ethiopian force of at least 80,000 and possibly as large as 120,000. This would overwhelm the Italians, who are thinking in much more conventional colonial warfare terms. The Italians have mobilized about 15,000 troops, as well as about 6,000 mercenaries, known colloquially as askari. So in total, they have about 20,000. And what Emperor Menelik has done is to organize an audience or an army of overwhelming size. There are preliminary conflicts at Lake Ashenge, at Ambalaje, and Mekele, but the decisive conflict happens at Adwa on the 1st of March, 1896. You asked about the consequences of the war. The most obvious one is that Italy is forced out of Ethiopian territory, forced to retreat into Eritrea, or what they've called Eritrea. This is, for them, of course, a humiliating defeat. For Ethiopia, of course, it consolidates the Ethiopian territory and Ethiopian state, and at the same time consolidates the rule of Emperor Menelik and Empress Taitu.
Apparently, Adwa victory is not an ordinary victory. In fact, the victory of Adwa has multiple consequences and implications. I will come to those important points later in the interview. But how Ethiopians were able to defeat Italy, well prepared, well organized, and modern army of Italy?
So the secret to Ethiopian victory was the fact that they could put an army in the field that was simply overwhelming. And this required drawing upon the resources of rivals, some of a number of Ethiopian leaders, some of whom are rivals to Menelik himself. I'm thinking of Ras Mangasha, who's the son of Emperor Johannes, the predecessor of Emperor Menelik. He sees himself as the rightful heir to the throne and deeply resents the role that Menelik has assumed for himself. Tekla Haimanot of Gojam also is a collaborator, but also a potential rival for power. So this is the situation in Ethiopia is one where Menelik has to bring into the defensive strategy figures, people who are potentially rivals to him. And in fact, the Italians are counting on this rivalry among regional rulers to tear apart the Ethiopian initiative. So the Italians are in fact surprised and in fact deeply concerned when they find out that the Ethiopian forces have congealed, that they have come together and they're able to fight together effectively as a single army. Their military intelligence tells them that Ethiopian forces are likely to be torn apart by internal differences. And that's not based on, simple rumor. I mean, there's evidence to suggest that there are differences and these could break out into the open. But in fact, they don't. And that's the secret to Ethiopian victory at Adwa. When the fight actually happens on the 1st of March, 1896, the size of the Ethiopian army is such that it completely overwhelms, completely envelops the Italian positions. Once the fight begins, there's really no doubt about the outcome. The Ethiopian strategy is one of envelopment, and it turns out to be a successful strategy.
How do you investigate the contribution of Ethiopian leadership, the then leadership of Ethiopia, such as King Menelik and his wife Empress Taitu, in winning the battle?
What's interesting about the way the campaign unfolds, because you have to remember that this is a campaign that carries on for months, And one of the great challenges of any army is how you keep an army fed, how you keep its spirits high. I mean, morale is important for a successful army. And so part of the wonder, if you like, of the Adwa campaign is that Emperor Menelik and Empress Taitu were able to keep this army together, keep morale relatively high, keep the army fed over hundreds of miles from where the campaign begins when they leave Addis Ababa, all the way up to this decisive encounter at Adwa. It's not an easy thing to do. This is a part of what you could call a logistical challenge, but it's part of their success has to do with the fact that they're joined by armies along the way. At Ambalaje, for example, at Mekele, the size of the Ethiopian forces grow as they're joined by forces from other parts of the country. And it's this very skillful campaign ultimately that assures the success of the campaign.
In your book titled The Battle of Adwa, African Victory in the Age of Empire, you depicted the notion that the victory of Adwa is the victory of Africa. How do you come to say that?
So, yes, I mean, it is a victory for Africa because what it shows is that Africa can be free. I mean, that's the ultimate lesson of the Battle of Adwa. Up until 1896 and the 1st of March and this decisive combat, there's a strong presumption on the part of Europeans, and you mentioned the Congress of Berlin, there's a strong presumption on the part of Europeans that Africa ultimately will be dominated by European imperial powers. And what the Battle of Adwa shows is that that future is not inevitable. That's the future that's projected for Africa, but it's not an inevitable future. And what the Battle of Adwa does is to, in effect, to put a stop to this particular ambition and this particular vision of the future. And it simply says, this isn't a necessary future. There are other futures that we can imagine, including a future where Africa is free.
Ethiopia gained that magnificent, resounding victory over Italy by the time the whole Africa were under the colony of Europe. So how Adwa victory ignited anti-colonial struggle across Africa and across Black people around the world?
I think the significance of the Adwa victory is that it holds out the possibility of a different future. The symbolic force of Adwa is there all the time. And that's one of the reasons why in the African diaspora, the colors of the African flag, for example, are an important part of a kind of Pan-African patriotism. That it's the symbolic importance of Ethiopia ultimately that matters for people in the Caribbean, for people in sub-Saharan Africa, for people in the United States of African heritage. They can look to Ethiopia as this example of what African can be in terms of freedom and sovereignty.
As you eloquently explained, Ethiopia gained that decisive, crucial victory over Italy through unity. So how do you recommend, how do you advise Ethiopians in terms of challenging, struggling the present and future challenges through unity and collaboration among themselves?
Well, I think part of the story of Adwa is that Ethiopians, despite profound differences, are able to come together. And in a sense, it's an old story about how people who don't necessarily always agree are forced to come together and work together because of an external threat. It's the challenge of Italy to Ethiopia, ultimately, that causes people to set aside some very real and profound differences for the sake of a common good. That's the story in effect of, it's a very, in a sense, a common story that people have to set aside differences in order to prevail in a common project. And it is very clearly an example that we can take from the story of the Battle of Adwa.
Professor Raymond Jonas, Professor of History at the University of Washington in the United States of America, I thank you very much for taking time to conduct this interview, and I hope I will see you in another show. I thank you very much, Professor. Bye.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Well, that was my interesting interview with Professor Raymond Jonas, Professor of History at the University of Washington in USA. Professor Raymond Jonas is also author of the book, The Battle of Adwa, African Victory in the Age of Empire. I hope you enjoyed the interview as much as I did. Many thanks for watching, and bye for now.
History remembers moments, but sometimes a moment remembers of people. I speak of the hour when Africa was bowed and bowed, and they have literally watched hope slip through their fingers. Then those the mountains of Adwa, towering, silent, and eternal. From those heights came the warriors of Ethiopia, united and unwavering. Their unity was a wall that no empire could possibly break. With these flags in their hands and the fire of freedom burning in their souls, the most impossible thing became a reality. Adwa became more than just a battle. It became the sunrise for all those who have lost hope. A spark ignited courage, giving voice to dreams long silenced, echoing movements for dignity, justice, and self-determination. So we honored those who stood, fought, and fell. Those heroes in which their courage saved the entire Africa. Because at Adwa, they merely fought for land, but to restore hope, reclaim identity, and to declare that Africa, unbound, unbroken, and could still stand still. And with that, generations have inherited their history, a light that will never be out, and a fire that will never be extinguished.
If you don't tell your story, it will be told by others. They'll talk of hunger, they'll talk of war, they'll talk of conflict, but they'll not say the things that are happening in Africa that are positive.
This is POA, a very new media organization in Ethiopia.
We have to be voice for ourselves. There is no one else that can tell our story better than us.
If it's defending African matters, then go for it. Go for Pulse Media.
This is the Pulse of Africa. Tune in, follow the journey, and learn about the news and what's shaping our African continent.
I am really impressed by the work that they are doing by telling the African story from Africa for Africans. I think it's definitely needed.
Please subscribe to the Pulse of Africa on all platforms.
a legacy of freedom for the whole Africa.
History remembers moments, but sometimes a moment remembers of people. I speak of the hour when Africa was bowed and bowed, and they have literally watched hope slip through their fingers. Then those the mountains of Adwa, towering, silent, and eternal. From those heights came the warriors of Ethiopia, united and unwavering. Their unity was a wall that no empire could possibly break. With these flags in their hands and the fire of freedom burning in their souls, the most impossible thing became a reality. Adwa became more than just a battle. It became the sunrise for all those who have lost hope. A spark ignited courage, giving voice to dreams long silenced, echoing movements for dignity, justice, and self-determination. So we honored those who stood, fought, and fell. Those heroes in which their courage saved the entire Africa. Because at Adwa, they merely fought for land, but to restore hope, reclaim identity, and to declare that Africa, unbound, unbroken, and could still stand still. And with that, generations have inherited their history, a light that will never be out, and a fire that will never be extinguished.
Welcome to the Pulse of Africa, your gateway to Africa's vibrant stories, voices, and visions. Join us every Monday and Wednesday for POA in Depth, where we provide sharp analysis of pressing current affairs, keeping you informed and engaged. Tuesdays feature the Africa We Want, dedicated to the African Union's Agenda 2063, discover Africa's journey toward a prosperous and integrated future. On Thursdays, tune into El Dorado, highlighting Africa's rich natural resources and how they can drive true prosperity. Fridays bring you Roundup, where seasoned journalists discuss enduring issues shaping our continent's destiny. Saturdays showcase the editorial, offering Pulse of Africa's perspective on Africa's challenges and opportunities, and celebrate the notables, recognizing remarkable Africans making a difference. And don't forget, Sundays are for Africa Melody, honoring our culture, music, and entertainment. So tune into the Pulse of Africa and experience the vitality of our continent every day of the week. Subscribe now.
We're back to you, viewers. Well, high-ranking government officials have delivered speeches at the museum, at the Adwa Victory Memorial Museum. And if we start with Mayor Adanecha Abebe, she said Adwa is the foundation for journey toward prosperity. Adwa is a grand symbol of unity and heroism. And of course, she has said many other things as well. Zalalam.
Exactly, Gamaj. The 130th anniversary of the Victory of Adwa is being celebrated at Adwa Victory Memorial Museum in the city of Addis Ababa, in the capital city of Ethiopia, and of course the capital city of Africa. And different leaders of Ethiopia are delivering a speech there at Adwa Victory Memorial Museum, and we will bring those speeches, the important message conveyed there to our viewers. And one of the speakers there was the mayor of the Addis Ababa City Administration, Her Excellency Adanecha Abebe. By the way, Mayor Adanecha Abebe is a brilliant mayor who is changing the face of Addis Ababa for better. You know, many Africans, journalists, ambassadors, diplomats are witnessing and testifying about the change they witnessed in Addis Ababa. You know, we have seen that the change in Addis Ababa, the miraculous and miraculous change in Addis Ababa is becoming a source of dialogue and discussion in different parliaments in Africa. So Mayor Adwa is making significant stride in terms of changing the face of Addis Ababa, coming to her important message at Adwa Victory Memorial Museum in the commemoration of the 130th anniversary of the Victory of Adwa. She said that Adwa Victory is a symbol of unity and heroism. Indeed, Adwa is a symbol of unity. You know, during the Battle of Adwa, there were differences in Ethiopia, differences between and among different regional leaders during that time, differences in the way, in the thinking, the way the country should go. There were differences in many aspects, but those regional leaders, religious leaders, and different leaders of the country put aside their differences and they come in unison, they come in unity, and they defended their country from external aggression. And unity is a lesson that we took from the Victory of Adwa, she said. And she also raised the issue of economic independence, like wheat development. And she said that Ethiopia is trying to repeat that kind of victory in wheat development, in wheat production. And earlier on, we have been saying that Ethiopia has been making significant step, has been making significant improvement and achievement in terms of wheat export. Ethiopia, for the first time in its recent history, has been able to export wheat product for the rest of the world. You know, much of the history of Ethiopia is connected to donation of wheat, where Ethiopia has been donated a great deal of wheat from outside world. But these days, because of the efforts of the government and the people of Ethiopia, Ethiopia is rewriting a new narrative in terms of wheat development, in terms of wheat product. And that was highlighted by Her Excellency Adwa, the Mayor of Addis Ababa City Administration. By the way, Ethiopia's move towards food self-sufficiency is getting recognition internationally, globally. For example, we remember that the United Nations Food System Summit has been conducted in Ethiopia. This is in recognition of Ethiopia's achievement, a remarkable achievement in terms of food self-sufficiency. And we remember that a few years ago in 2024, FAO also awarded Ethiopia's Prime Minister, His Excellency Dr. Abiy Ahmed, Agricola Award. Yes. You know, His Excellency received Agricola Award from Rome by FAO. So Ethiopia's significant stride and achievement in terms of food self-sufficiency is recognized internationally. So this should be the way that we commemorate the Victory of Adwa. We need to repeat, we need to emulate the legacies of the Victory of Adwa, like unity, determination and conviction in our development endeavors.
Exactly. Thank you, Zelalem. Tedros.
Okay, شكرا جميتشس. طبعا تجري الاحتفالات في مدينة أديس أبابا في العاصمة أديس أبابا باحتفال عدوى لل130، وطبعا كانت هنالك عدة كلمات للمسؤولين والوفود، وكان طبعا من أبرز الكلمات التي ألقتها هي عمدة أديس أبابا أدانج أبيبي. وطبعا يعني قالت أو ركزت على أن عدوى هي أساس رحلتنا نحو الازدهار، أي رحلة إثيوبيا. وأيضا قالت أنها جسدت الوحدة الوطنية والبطولة والشجاعة للإثيوبيين، وذكرت أن الوحدة هي التي جعلت إثيوبيا تنتصر على الغزاة في تلك الوقت، وأشارت أن الوحدة هي يعني أساس نمو الازدهار. وأيضا أشارت في خطابها إلى صد النهضة، وأيضا إلى البصمة الخضراء، حيث أن إثيوبيا يعني زرعت أكثر من 40 مليون، تقريبا 40 مليون شتلة. وطبعا أدانج أبيبي يعني هي من العمدات في إفريقيا بصورة عامة التي تحدث طفرة عمرانية حديثة جدا في أديس أبابا، كما يشاهدها كل الزوار ويرون يعني التغيير على أرض الواقع. وإثيوبيا طبعا يعني تعتبر لديها أو تحاول كل يوم بعد يوم أن تحدث طفرة جديدة، أن تحدث انتصار جديد كانتصار عدوى، سواء كان عبر النقل عبر الخطوط الطيران الإثيوبي عفوا، أو عبر أيضا الاكتفاء الذاتي في تصدير القمح، وحصول أيضا رئيس الوزراء على جائزة في ذلك. لذلك يعني إثيوبيا كل يوم نراها تحدث انتصارا جديدا في عدوى، يعني انتصارا جديدا إسر عدوى. كل انتصار يخلد هو خلفية أو ينعكس على الانتصار القديم أو الذي حدث في عام 1896 على هزيمة الإيطاليين وهزيمة الهيمنة الأوروبية على الأفارقة. تفضل قمجس.
Thank you, Zelalem. Well, we watched that high-ranking government officials, including President Haile Selassie, are giving speeches at the museum.
Yes.
Lots of speeches are taking place. So I hope our reporters will get us the messages.
Yeah, the messages.
Yes.
Later. Earlier on, we have been following and watching my interesting interview with Professor of History, Professor Raymond Jonas.
Yeah.
Professor Raymond Jonas is currently working as a Professor of History at Washington University in the United States of America, and I interviewed him through Zoom from the United States of America. By the way, Professor Raymond Jonas is one of few white writers and historians who compiled a detailed history of the Victory of Adwa, who brought us a comprehensive detail on the history of the Victory of Adwa. The thing is, the Victory of Adwa is a monumental achievement, isn't it? It has inspired Africans and black people around the world. Not only that, the Victory of Adwa has changed the course of history. Before the Battle of Adwa, before the Victory of Adwa, the perception was, the belief was that whites are always superior. And, the Victory of Adwa shattered that belief. So it is a global history, it's a world history. But this victory has not received the attention that it deserves. In fact, white historians, European historians and writers, researchers didn't write that much on the Victory of Adwa. And, it is going to be the history. It's going to be the responsibility of today's generation. It should be the responsibility of Africans and black people around the world to compile a detailed history of the Victory of Adwa, because we are saying that African history is somewhere lost, and we need to restore the history, the heritage, the culture, the identity, the wisdom of Africa. So that started from knowing the history, writing the history, investigating and compiling the history, and transferring that true history, nuanced history, to the coming generation. And Professor Raymond Jonas is, like I said, one of the few historians who wrote a comprehensive history of the Victory of Adwa. Gamage, for example, when I try to search information about the Victory of Adwa through internet, I have not obtained that much information about the Victory of Adwa, because it has not been written. Yes. Historians, researchers, academia have not written enough about the Victory of Adwa. So it is the responsibility of journalists, for example. It should be the responsibility of researchers and academians to write a detailed history of the Victory of Adwa, so that today's generation and the next generation will know the history of Adwa, so that they will repeat that victory in their daily routines. For example, today there are pressing challenges all over the world, including here in Africa, Ethiopia. So to repeat the Victory of Adwa, we need to take lessons from that important and colorful history. In my professional career, for example, I was able to interview various professors. For example, Professor Raymond Jonas being the one, and Professor Baharu Zodi, Professor of History, who is also currently teaching history at the University of Addis Ababa. And he is a notable professor of history, in particular in investigating and researching Ethiopian history. And I also interviewed Professor Shumet Sishen, who is also a distinguished professor of history. So all of them, all professors agreed on the fact that the factor that enabled Ethiopia to defeat Italian aggressors at the Battle of Adwa was their unity. You know, the significance of unity can never be overestimated. You know, unity has always been vital in the success of Ethiopia. You know, before the Battle of Adwa, there were enormous success. After the Battle of Adwa, there were wars and battles waged against Ethiopia from external enemies. But Ethiopians have been able to survive those wars because of their unity. And you know, the concept of unity, I mean the idea of unity is also entertained today during the Adwa, during the celebration of the 130th anniversary of the victory of Adwa. For example, earlier on, the mayor of the Addis Ababa city administration, Her Excellency Adwa Abebe, was also saying that unity should be the legacy of the victory of Adwa. And today Ethiopia is facing challenge in terms of many aspects. So the way to pass those hard times, difficult times, is through unity, through strengthening and solidifying our unity. There might be divisions, there might be differences in the way the country is going, but we shouldn't put Ethiopia's sovereignty and independence on the table. And what we learned from the history of the victory of Adwa is that Ethiopians' ancestors, our forefathers, the generation of Adwa, didn't put the issue of sovereignty and independence on the table. The issue of sovereignty has never been compromised in Ethiopia's history. And this is, I think, the enduring lesson that we should never ever forget.
Yes, Zelalem, you've told us very well, especially what Professor Raymond Jonas has said. But let me ask you, as you talked to him, did he mention, you know, anything that serves as a bridge between the past generation or the generation of the Adwa and the current generation, in case you might have asked him?
Yeah, I have asked him lots of questions. To be honest with you, I have not raised this question for Professor Raymond Jonas, but I did raise this question for Professor Baharu Zode, Professor of History at Addis Ababa University. I asked him, like, the generation of Adwa defeated Italian aggressors, powerful colonizers, at the Battle of Adwa, even though their capacity was incomparable. But do you think today's generation can defeat the same kind of powerful enemy? I asked him, and he replied, you know, the source of strength for Ethiopia is its unity, and he affirmed that Ethiopia's unity has continued till today. For example, he said that after the Battle of Adwa, Ethiopians have fought with foreign aggressors 3-4 times, and Ethiopians have humiliated foreign aggressors, external enemies, in different battles in the north, in the east part of Ethiopia. There were different external aggressors, and Ethiopians defeated them. And Ethiopia's unity is still with us today, Professor Baharu Zode responded. And we can see, for example, that 7-8 years ago, when Ethiopian Prime Minister, the current Prime Minister of the country, His Excellency Dr. Abiy Ahmed, came to power, he was preaching about the unity of Ethiopia, the prosperity of Ethiopia, the independence of Ethiopia. He has been very much, you know, toward Ethiopianism, Ethiopian unity, Ethiopian glory. You know, he is working all the way to ensure Ethiopia's glory. Yeah, so Ethiopians have shown unwavering support for His Excellency Dr. Abiy Ahmed because he carried the idea of unity, he carried the legacy of unity and independence and sovereignty. So we can definitely say that Ethiopians' unity is still with us, and it is becoming, of course, the source of our identity, like our culture, like our traditional dress, our traditional song. Ethiopian unity is becoming part of our identity. It's our blood, you know. For example, Ethiopians, you know, look divided when you see them from outside. But, you know, in the times of external attack, in the times of external invasion, they are always united. You know, even in the time of the Battle of Adwa, you know, there was considerable divisions and differences between and among regional leaders, religious leaders, nobles, and some of them were also fighting against the then leader and ruler of Ethiopia. But during that external invasion, they stood as one, and they marched to the mountains and hills of Adwa, and they humiliated external aggressors, namely Italy. So Professor Baharu Zewde said Ethiopia's unity is with us today, he said.
Well, Zelalem, again, you make me think of another question as you explained me.
That means I explained it well.
That's
yeah, if I invite you for another question.
Yeah, of course. I also want to ask you if you ever asked any of these historians or these history professors. Well, as you mentioned it well, Ethiopians during that time still had divisions among themselves. There had been conflict of interest. There had been, conflict that arose from power share, resource sharing, etc. And of course personal interest, we don't know. And still, even though these challenges were there, Ethiopians were united against a common enemy, an invader. And what is it, that thing, that element that brought these Ethiopians united, that allowed them to mobilize resources, both human and property, from all over the country, and then be able to march to the Adwa battlefield? What element is there exactly at that time, and have you ever asked if any of those elements exist prevalent these days as well?
Yes, the simple, short and clear answer is the quest for sovereignty, the quest for national independence. It is the quest for sovereignty that brought Ethiopians together, even though they developed a kind of divisions and adversaries, and there were also immense subversive activities during that time. But because Ethiopians, wanted their sovereignty and independence, they marched together. And one of the things that Professor Jonas said was that Ethiopians' leadership that time was also brilliant. He said that King Minilik at that time understood that Italians were, the ambition of Italian, the vision of Italian was to make Ethiopia their protectorate, and Italy's ambition was, never negotiable. And Italians wanted to subjugate and dominate Ethiopia. And King Minilik understood them, but he didn't communicate their hidden mission to them. Rather, he kept that hidden mission to himself and the people around him. And he was preparing for the war because he understood that war was inevitable, because he knew that Ethiopians didn't compromise their sovereignty and independence, and the ambition and the interest of Italy was to colonize Ethiopia. So their interest was irreconcilable, so that war was inevitable. King Minilik understood this, and he was preparing for the war. Ethiopia didn't have the capacity to wage war against colonial power at that time, but King Minilik, together with the other leaders, was able to bring and buy weapons, artilleries from Europeans as well, for example. He was very wise that he had a good friendship and cooperation with European countries as well, and he was able to get a great deal of weapon from Europeans, and he coordinated, organized the people of Ethiopia. That time Ethiopians were able to organize close to 100,000 soldiers, and Italians were not able to do so. In fact, Italian soldiers were not more than 15,000, and Ethiopian forces overwhelmed them, and Ethiopians were able to defeat Italian aggressors. And the wise leadership of Minilik should also be recognized when we are talking about the victory of Adwa. And what was your question? Because we have spoken a lot.
Yeah, okay, we'll be back to it
later. We'll be back to it.
We'll return to it later.
Sure.
I think we better take a brief break.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, viewers, we would like to take a brief break and be back to you ASAP. Stay with us. Stay tuned.
The Victory of Adwa, a legacy of freedom for the whole Africa.
History remembers moments, but sometimes a moment remembers of people. I speak of the hour when Africa was bowed and bowed, and they have literally watched hope slip through their fingers. Then those the mountains of Adwa, towering, silenced, and eternal. From those heights came the warriors of Ethiopia, united and unwavering. Their unity was a wall that no empire could possibly break. With these flags in their hands and the fire of freedom burning in their souls, the most impossible thing became a reality. Adwa became more than just a battle. It became the sunrise for all those who have lost hope. A spark ignited courage, giving voice to dreams long silenced, echoing movements for dignity, justice, and self-determination. So we honored those who stood, fought, and fell. Those heroes in which their courage saved the entire Africa. Because at Adwa, they merely fought for land, but to restore hope, reclaim identity, and to declare that Africa, unbound, unbroken, and could still stand still. And with that, generations have inherited their history, a light that will never be out, and a fire that will never be extinguished.
The Victory of Adwa, a legacy of freedom for the whole Africa.
If you don't tell your story, it will be told by others. They'll talk of hunger, they'll talk of war, they'll talk of conflict, but they'll not say the things that are happening in Africa that are positive.
This is POA, a very new media organization in Ethiopia.
We have to be voice for ourselves. There is no one else that can tell our story better than us.
If it's defending African matters, then go for it. Go for Pulse Media.
This is the Pulse of Africa. Tune in, follow the journey, and learn about the news and what's shaping our African continent.
I am really impressed by the work that they are doing by telling the African story from Africa for Africans. I think it's definitely needed.
Please subscribe to the Pulse of Africa on all platforms.
History remembers moments, but sometimes a moment remembers of people. I speak of the hour when Africa was bowed and bowed, and they have literally watched hope slip through their fingers. Then those the mountains of Adwa, towering, silenced, and eternal. From those heights came the warriors of Ethiopia, united and unwavering. Their unity was a wall that no empire could possibly break. With these flags in their hands and the fire of freedom burning in their souls, the most impossible thing became a reality. Adwa became more than just a battle. It became the sunrise for all those who have lost hope. A spark ignited courage, giving voice to dreams long silenced, echoing movements for dignity, justice, and self-determination. So we honored those who stood, fought, and fell. Those heroes in which their courage saved the entire Africa. Because at Adwa, they merely fought for land, but to restore hope, reclaim identity, and to declare that Africa, unbound, unbroken, and could still stand still. And with that, generations have inherited their history, a light that will never be out, and a fire that will never be extinguished.
The Victory of Adwa, a legacy of freedom for the whole Africa. The Victory of Adwa, a legacy of freedom for the whole Africa.
We're back to you again, viewers. Thank you very much for you watching us. Zelalem, you've told us many things earlier, and let me come to Teddy this time. I just would like you to share our viewers what is the relevance of the Adwa victory to this current generation in various aspects, economically, politically, in any way.
نعم شكرا لك جميتشس. مشاهدينا الكرام، طبعا تستمر التغطية لأحداث أو احتفال الذكرى بعدوى لل130 في العاصمة الإثيوبية أديس أبابا ل130 بحضور كبار الغادة سواء كان من إثيوبيا أو الغادة الأفارقة. ويعتبر كما ذكرنا سابقا أن النصر عدوى يعتبر يعني أنه ألهم جميع الشعوب الإفريقية قبل الشعوب الإثيوبية. وطبعا يعني معركة عدوى التي وقعت عام 1896 يعني لم تعد يعني تفهم كمجرى عسكري فقط، بل أيضا أصبحت يعني تتحدث بأدوات عصرية وتواكب العصر، وتحولت يعني إلى روح مقاومة إلى العصر الجديد. واليوم تجسد طبعا يعني النصر في بناء اقتصاد رقمي، ويعزز السيادة المعرفية، ويقلل أيضا التخلف الذي يحاول الدول الغربية يعني نشره عن إفريقيا. وطبعا يعني زميلي زلالم كان قد أجرى لقاء مع رايان جونز، واللي هو أيضا يعني بروفيسور في جامعة واشنطن، وأيضا برهان زودة البروفيسور في جامعة أديس أبابا، والذين يعني تحدثوا عن أهمية انتصار عدوى ومكانته ليس فقط بين إثيوبيا بل أيضا في إفريقيا والعالم. وطبعا يعني بروفيسور رايان جونز يعتبر من القلائل الذين يعني تحدثوا وذكروا أهمية انتصار عدوى، لأننا كما نعلم يعني هنالك يعني تهميش وعدم إظهار النضالات والانتصارات والنجاحات الإفريقية من قبل الدول الغربية. لكن يعتبر البروفيسور رايان جونز من البروفيسورات والكتاب الذين أظهروا يعني أهمية انتصار عدوى لدى الإثيوبيين ولدى الأفارقة، وأيضا كيف غير المنظور الأوروبي تجاه إفريقيا، وغير أيضا المنظور الإفريقي تجاه أوروبا، حيث أن كما ذكرنا سابقا أنه لم يكن في تلك الحقبة الصعبة التي كانت تخضع فيها معظم الدول الإفريقية بعد يعني مؤتمر برلين للاضطهادات والاستعمار والاحتلال ويعني أعمال التنكيل والتعذيب، يعني كانت حقبة صعبة جدا في تلك الفترة، ولم يكن يستطيع الإنسان الأسود أن يضع رأسه برأس مع الإنسان يعني الأبيض. ولكن بفضل انتصار عدوى وبفضل التاريخ الذي ذكر وكتب ويتم الاحتفال به من سنة إلى سنة، وصلنا إلى 130 والثلاثين ويتحدثون عنه يعني الكتاب الإثيوبيين والأفارقة والدوليين أيضا كالبروفيسور ريان جونز، يعني يظهر لنا مدى أهمية يعني وقوة انتصار عدوى لدى الإثيوبيين ولدى الأفارقة ولدى المجتمع الدولي. تفضل يا مجلس.
Thank you, Tedros. Well, Zelalem, let me take you back to Mayor Adanich Abebe's speech. Well, this generation is supposed to be learning or drawing lessons from the generation of Adwa, fighting the incoming enemy, the invader. What do you think are invaders these days? For example, in terms of poverty, in terms of lack of knowledge, in terms of grappling with catching up with the current development and changes in the world. If we lag behind, what will happen? How are we? To what level do you think we're exposed to invasion that's coming from the outside world, especially from the developed world to Africa?
Yeah, that's an important question, I would say, Gamets. Today there is a threat of colonialism, but in another form, in the form of neocolonialism. Yes. We are in the time of neocolonialism.
Exactly, that's my point.
Sure.
Yeah.
Where developed worlds, civilized worlds are donating money.
Advanced world.
The advanced world are donating and providing money and funds for African countries, and they want to control Africans through the money that they are offering. So we need to keep our sovereignty and independence by becoming prosperous nation, by becoming economically independent. Of course, that is at the heart of Her Excellency Mayor Adanich Abebe's speech. She said that we need to repeat the victory of Adwa in development, in many aspects, in democracy, for example. She said, for example, this day, there are differences in terms of political ideology, but we need to manage that differences in a civilized fashion, in a democratic way, so that the strengthness of our country will never be compromised. So we need to keep our strengths. For example, we need to repeat that victory in democracy. Earlier on, I have been explaining about the significance and the necessity of strengthening democracy in Ethiopia. We Ethiopians need to create a country where different voices are heard, where diversity is upheld. I mean, where diversity is nurtured in this country. Diversity of ideas, diversity of philosophies, diversity of political philosophies and ideologies. For example, few months ago, His Excellency Dr. Abiy Ahmed, the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, in his address to the Parliament, he promised to make the current election better than the previous one. Of course, Ethiopia is also making a significant development and improvement in terms of election, which is one pillar of democracy. For example, the 2021 election was better than the previous 5 elections, and His Excellency Dr. Abiy Ahmed promised that the 7th general election, the 2026 Ethiopian election, which is underway, will be more democratic and fair and peaceful than the previous election. So Ethiopians need to be living in election, Ethiopians need to be living democracy, need to sacrifice for democracy. The sacrifice this time is not to shed your blood. The sacrifice this time is to compromise your interest for the sake of the united Ethiopia, for the sake of a strong Ethiopia. There are differences, but differences need to be managed in a democratic and civilized fashion, government.
Yeah, thank you, Zelalem. I think we have a live coverage of the celebration right from Adwa Victory Memorial Museum. So we just go to that. Right. Viewers, let's take you to Adwa Victory Memorial Museum. We have our reporter there to give us what's happening there.
Continues to surface in speeches and reflections here. Access to the Red Sea. The victory of Adwa was never just about territory, it was about sovereignty, about the right of a nation to decide its own destiny. At the time, colonial powers were racing not only for land, but for trade routes, ports, and strategic waters. Control of access meant control of power. And today, 130 years later, Ethiopia once again finds itself in a conversation about access, this time to the Red Sea. Speakers here have drawn a clear line between past and present. Adwa symbolized Ethiopia's refusal to be landlocked politically, even if geography would later make it so physically. The victory at Adwa protected independence. But independence in modern world is also economic. It is strategic. It is maritime. Access to the Red Sea is not a favor. It is not a luxury. It is not a request born out of weakness. It is a right rooted in history, geography, economics, and dignity. Access to the Red Sea is not simply about water. It is about trade, security, growth, and regional balance. It is about ensuring that a nation of over 100 million people can fully participate in global commerce. And yet, the message echoed here today is not one of aggression, but of dignity. Adwa reminds Ethiopians that strength lies in unity, that negotiation carries more weight when backed by history, that sovereignty is preserved not only on the battlefield, but at the diplomatic table. The mountains of Adwa once answered the question of political independence. Now, 130 years later, Ethiopia is navigating a new chapter, one that is defined not by colonial invasion, but by economic aspiration and regional dialogue. The spirit, however, remains the same. A nation determined to stand tall, a nation conscious of its history, a nation aware that access, whether to freedom or to the sea, has always shaped its destiny. The spirit here today at the celebration is just incredible. The celebrations have been amazing with music, dance, and even an AI-generated short film on Adwa. The celebrations will continue with more curated cultural performances, theatrical reenactments, and a ceremonial march by members of the armed forces honoring the legacy of Adwa. Reporting live at the 130th anniversary commemoration of Adwa, I am Tinsaya Gabeau. Stay with Pulse of Africa to watch the live broadcast of these celebrations. Back to you in the studio.
Welcome to the Pulse of Africa, your gateway to Africa's vibrant stories, voices and visions. Join us every Monday and Wednesday for POA in Depth, where we provide sharp analysis of pressing current affairs, keeping you informed and engaged. Tuesdays feature the Africa We Want, dedicated to the African Union's Agenda 2063, discover Africa's journey toward a prosperous and integrated future. On Thursdays, tune into El Dorado, highlighting Africa's rich natural resources and how they can drive true prosperity. Fridays bring you Roundup, where seasoned journalists discuss enduring issues shaping our continent's destiny. Saturdays showcase the editorial, offering Pulse of Africa's perspective on Africa's challenges and opportunities, and celebrate the notables, recognizing remarkable Africans making a difference. And don't forget, Sundays are for Africa Melody, honoring our culture, music and entertainment. So tune into the Pulse of Africa and experience the vitality of our continent every day of the week. Subscribe now.
History remembers moments, but sometimes a moment remembers of people. I speak of the hour when Africa was bowed and bowed, and they have literally watched hope slip through their fingers. Then those the mountains of Adwa, towering, silent, and eternal. From those heights came the warriors of Ethiopia, united and unwavering. Their unity was a wall that no empire could possibly break. With these flags in their hands and the fire of freedom burning in their souls, the most impossible thing became a reality. Adwa became more than just a battle. It became the sunrise for all those who have lost hope. A spark ignited courage, giving voice to dreams long silenced, echoing movements for dignity, justice, and self-determination. So we honored those who stood, fought, and fell. Those heroes in which their courage saved the entire Africa. Because at Adwa, they merely fought for land, but to restore hope, reclaim identity, and to declare that Africa, unbound, unbroken, and could still stand still. And with that, generations have inherited their history, a light that will never be out, and a fire that will never be extinguished.
نعم، ما زلنا في تغطيتنا المباشرة من متحف عدوى التذكاري في العاصمة الإثيوبية أديس أبابا، وبالتحديد في حي بياسا، لنحيي 130 ذكرى معركة عدوى، حيث شهد الحفل حضور عدد من المسؤولين العسكريين والحكوميين إلى جانب سفراء وجنرالات ووزراء الدفاع من دول الأفارقة. ووضع رئيس جمهورية إثيوبيا تاي أسكسلاسي أكاليل الزهور على نصب شهداء معركة عدوى خلال الاحتفال بالذكرى 130 للمعركة التاريخية. وأيضا كما شارك في وضع الأكاليل كل من نائبة رئيس مفوضية الاتحاد الإفريقي سلمى حدادي، ورئيس مجلس النواب الشعبي الإثيوبي تاجس جافو، ورئيس الأركان القوات المسلحة المشير برهانو جولا، ووزيرة الدفاع عائشة محمد، وعمدة أديس أبابا أدانيتش أبيبي، إلى جانب عدد من القيادات الأمنية وكبار المهاربين القدامى. ويحتفل بهذه المناسبة في العاصمة الإثيوبية عند نصب عدوى التذكاري تحت شعار من تاريخ فاخر إلى آفاق مشرق. وكمان أكدت عمدة مدينة أديس أبابا أدانيتش أبيبي أن عدوى فهي مدرسة عظيمة للوطنية، مشيرة إلى أن هذه المدرسة الحية تمنح الأجيال دروسا في التضحية والوحدة. وقالت أيضا وزيرة الدفاع عائشة محمد إن انتصار عدوى يمثل إنجازا تاريخيا يتجاوز حدود الدولة، حيث هزمت قوات الشعب الموحدة قوات غازية مجهزة. اليوم مع احتفال إثيوبيا بالذكرى 130 لانتصار معركة عدوى، حيث يبرز موضوع أهم، وهو موضوع الوصول إلى البحر الأحمر كحق تاريخي وجغرافي واقتصادي وليس امتيازا. فالانتصار لم يكن فقط على الأراضي، بل كان حماية للسيادة والاستقلال، مع التأكيد على أن القوة تكمن في الوحدة والتاريخ، وأن الوصول إلى البحر يضمن الأمن والنمو والمشاركة الاقتصادية لأكثر من 130 مليون نسمة إثيوبيا. إذن بالإجمال انتصار معركة عدوى أصبح مصدر إلهام لحركة التحرر الإفريقية وحركة النهضة الإفريقية في الشتات. رأى كثير من الأفارقة والصود حول العالم في عدوى دليلا عمليا على إمكانية مقاومة الهيمنة الأوروبية. كنت معكم أنا محمد سعيد من قناة بيوعي عربي نبض إفريقيا لمتابعة أبرز فعاليات الاحتفال مباشرة من العاصمة الإثيوبية أديس أبابا.
History remembers moments. but sometimes a moment where members of people. I speak of the hour when Africa was bowed and bowed, and they have literally watched hope slip through their fingers. Then those the mountains of Adwa, towering, silenced, and eternal. From those heights came the warriors of Ethiopia, united and unwavering. Their unity was a wall that no empire could possibly break. With these flags in their hands and the fire of freedom burning in their souls, the most impossible thing became a reality. Adwa became more than just a battle. It became the sunrise for all those who have lost hope. A spark ignited courage, giving voice to dreams long silenced, echoing movements for dignity, justice, and self-determination. So we honored those who stood, fought, and fell. Those heroes in which their courage saved the entire Africa. Because at Adwa, they merely fought for land, but to restore hope, reclaim identity, and to declare that Africa, unbound, unbroken, and could still stand still. And with that, generations have inherited their history, a light that will never be out, and a fire that will never be extinguished.
The Victory of Adwa, a legacy of freedom for the whole Africa.
If you don't tell your story, it will be told by others. They'll talk of hunger, they'll talk of war, they'll talk of conflict, but they'll not say the things that are happening in Africa that are positive.
This is POA, a very new media organization in Ethiopia.
We have to be voice for ourselves. There is no one else that can tell our story better than us.
If it's defending African matters, then go for it. Go for Pulse Media.
This is the Pulse of Africa. Tune in, follow the journey, and learn about the news and what's shaping our African continent.
I am really impressed by the work that they are doing by telling the African story from Africa for Africans. I think it's definitely needed.
Please subscribe to the Pulse of Africa on all platforms.
Back to you, viewers. Well, Zelalem and Theodros, our reporters have brought us messages of high-ranking government officials who gave speeches there at the museum. Well, Zelalem, many important points have been included in the report, and I would like the both of you to make some kind of reflections.
Yeah, we have been following through the reports of our reporters, Tinsai Gabayo from English department and Mohammed Said from Arabic department, and they were delivering that live report from Adwa Victory Memorial Museum, museum dedicated to honor Adwa Victory. And there at Adwa Victory Memorial Museum, the 130th anniversary of the Victory of Adwa is being celebrated, and as I said, high-ranking government officials were presented, and they also delivered a speech. As we understood from the reports of our reporters from Adwa Victory Memorial Museum, the main message, the major idea entertained and emphasized during the anniversary celebration is the issue of sea access. The issue of sea access. Ethiopia with a population of 130 million and above, with a rapidly growing economy, has not access to the sea, has not secured access to the sea. And this is deeply worrisome, isn't it? There is no country in this planet, there is no country in the world that has huge population like Ethiopia and doesn't have access to the sea. What does that mean? There is no country in the world with a population of 130 million and with fast growing economy and doesn't have access to the sea. This is a bit puzzling and deeply worrisome for Ethiopians. And this should be the question of the day, and this should be the task of the day, and this should be the assignment that should be brought to the generations of today. And Ethiopians need to secure sea access. As our reporters here from Adwa Victory Memorial Museum reported, the issue of sea access for Ethiopia today is not the question of luxury. It's not luxury. It is a necessity. You have such a huge population, and you have fast economic growth. Ethiopia is among the fastest growing economy in the world, not only in Ethiopia, in the world. Ethiopia is the largest populous country, the second largest populous country in Africa, but without any access to the sea. And the majority of Ethiopia's import and export trade is very much relied on the port of Djibouti. More than 90% of Ethiopian trade, export and import trade, is sailed through the port of Djibouti, and Ethiopia needs to diversify its sea access. This is the question of survival, I would say, the question of survival. It's very much the question of necessity. It's not luxury. The government of Ethiopia, together its people, is making significant effort. The government is putting lots of effort on the issue of sea access, and in fact the government is moving in peaceful and diplomatic manner to secure sea access. But I think this issue needs to be understood by its neighbors. The point is 130 years ago, Ethiopians fought against Italian aggressors, external colonizers, to secure their sovereignty. During that time, sovereignty was very much restricted to the land. If you secure the land of Ethiopia, that means Ethiopia has been secured. The sovereignty of Ethiopia has been maintained. But this day, the sovereignty, the definition of sovereignty has been expanded. Ethiopia needs to access sea so that it can permanently secure sea access. There are various ways by which Ethiopia could secure sea access. For example, Ethiopia's neighbors, such as Somalia, for example, such as Kenya, for example, and other neighbors of Ethiopia could offer and grant access to the sea. And Ethiopia needs to be understood by its neighbors. And Ethiopia is paying lots of effort on it. And I think it should be, critically understood by its neighbors. It's unbearable. It could never be sustainable. So the sustainable, the permanent way for Ethiopia to survive and to sustain its economic growth is to secure sea access. And it is very much in line with the African Union Agenda 2063. Agenda 2063, envisages to see a prosperous, integrated and peaceful Africa. To realize that dream, countries like Ethiopia, with a huge population, need to sustain economic growth, need to make their economic growth consistent. And for that to happen, they need to have access to the sea. And this should be understood by its neighbors, by international organizations, and by the international community as well.
Thank you, Zelalem. You've told us a lot of things, and these are really so important. Theodros, I want to give you the chance.
Okay, thank you. شكرا. مشاهدينا الكرام، كما تابعنا منذ قليل من خلال موفد قناة نبض إفريقيا محمد سعيد الذي أشار عن حضور عدة وفود من الدول الإفريقية وإثيوبيا أيضا، ومن أبرزهم طبعا رئيس إثيوبيا تاي أسقاسلاسي وعمدة أديس أبابا أدانج أبيبي وعدة وفود أخرى. وطبعا كانت هنالك مراسم وضع أكاليل الزهور، وكان من ضمن الذين وضعوا طبعا هو رئيس إثيوبيا تاي أسقاسلاسي، وأيضا نائبة رئيس مفوضية الاتحاد الأفريقي سلمى مالكي. وأيضا تطرق لنا مراسلنا محمد سعيد إلى قضية مهمة تطرقوا لها في باحتفال بذكرى عدوى 130، وهي طبعا قضية الوصول إلى منفذ بحري، وهي طبعا قضية ملحة وهامة جدا. أشاروا لها الحكومة الإثيوبية والسلطة الإثيوبية أشارت لها في عدة محافل وعدة عدة مناسبات. كون أن الوصول إلى البحر شيء ملح وضروري جدا للنمو الاقتصادي لإثيوبيا، لأن إثيوبيا طبعا تعتبر من الدول الحبيسة أو أول دولة حبيسة يمكن أن نقول، يعني بتعداد سكانها اللي يصل إلى 130 مليون نسمة، وهذا تعداد سكاني أظنه لا يوجد في العالم حتى. لذلك يعني إثيوبيا ترى الوصول إلى المنفذ البحري مسألة ملحة وحيوية جدا، وطبعا هذا كله في إطار الطرق السلمية وليست في بالأمور التصعيدية وما إلى آخره من الشبهات التي يعني يحدثونها على إثيوبيا وعلى طبعا من المنظور الإثيوبي. يعني ترى والمجتمع الدولي أيضا يروا أن على المجتمع الدول الجيران لإثيوبيا أن يتفهموا المطالب الإثيوبية السلمية للوصول إلى البحر والحصول على منفذ بحري، يعني من أجل خلق تكامل اقتصادي. وأظن أيضا أن هذا هو يعني ضمن الأولويات يعني أجندة 2063 من الاتحاد الإفريقي، وعلى يعني دول الجوار أن تتفهم ذلك من أجل يعني خلق فرص تكامل اقتصادي بين كل الدول. كما ذكرت يعني سابقا إثيوبيا لديها يعني واحد من أكبر وأهم الإنجازات التي تعتبر يعني ثاني بعد نصر عدوى، وهو صد النهضة، والكل ينتفع منه، كل دول الجوار تنتفع منه حتى أقصى الشمال. فلماذا أيضا كما يعني ينتفع دول الجوار من ينابيع النيل التي تنبع من إثيوبيا، لماذا أيضا يعني إثيوبيا لا تستفيد أيضا من الحصول على منفذ البحري السلمي يعني لأغراض اقتصادية وتنموية يعني تفيد جميع الأفارقة؟ وهذا طبعا ذكره مراسلنا محمد سعيد اللي تطرق له في الاحتفال، وطبعا ذكر لنا أيضا أن الاحتفال يعني تخللته رقصات وأغاني وأيضا فيديوهات ومسرحيات كانت عبر الذكاء الاصطناعي. وهنا يعني نرى وننظر نمو واقتصاد وتقدم إثيوبيا في التنمية الرقمية، حيث أنها أصبحت يعني الذكاء الاصطناعي أيضا يشارك في الاحتفالات وفي المناسبات، ويتم يعني من خلاله إظهار يعني مدى قوة ومدى هيمنة ومدى يعني انتصار إثيوبيا على الدول الغربية ومدى السيادة الوطنية التي تحتفظ بها إثيوبيا إلى يومنا هذا. تفضل زميلي جميتس.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Really, we raised very important points, and I do hope that our viewers have got important points. Well, the 130th anniversary of the Victory of Adwa has been celebrated since this morning, since dawn, and of course that began with artillery firing, and of course high-ranking government officials were situated at the museum, at the Adwa Victory Memorial Museum, and they performed wreath-laying ceremony, and they attended it, and they made speeches, and we had also armed forces parade, and we also had Friends of Ethiopia representatives who attended the celebration. And so far we can see that this Adwa Victory Day is being celebrated in a very colorful manner, and thanks to our reporters, they have been bringing to us and to our viewers the events of the celebration. And of course POA English and Arabic will continue to bring the celebrations events to our distinguished viewers in the remaining day, and I hope that important points have been mentioned. But before I wrap up, I just would like to focus on the last points that both of you have raised, which is what Ethiopia wants is, of course, to grow, to develop, and to be a winner at this time. And Ethiopia learns a lot from the Adwa Victory Days, and it wants to repeat, those good victories, to current endeavors as well, economic, political, social. And for this, our leaders have stressed that we need sea access, fair sea access. They said fair sea access. Well, when we talk about sea access, countries, nations, as far away as thousands of miles away from the Red Sea have got, their ship, have got their military, but Ethiopia only a few kilometers away from the Red Sea has been abandoned to have access to it for quite too long, and as a result the country has suffered, and Ethiopian leaders have been insisting, and they are still insisting, that this has to stop, and Ethiopia needs to have the fair share of the Red Sea. And well, the aim is to ensure that it develops and it attains the kind of prosperity it aspires. And this is, human right, isn't it?
Exactly.
And we are not celebrating the victory of Adwa because we are warmongers, we are peaceful people. But as far as, invaders come, colonialists come and then want to take what is ours, we defend our sovereignty, we defend our rights. Yeah?
No doubt.
Yeah, so thank you, the both of you. Viewers, we would like to say thank you very much for watching us, and we invite you to watch us in the remaining programs of POA English and Arabic. We would like to say thank you again and stay tuned. Goodbye for now.